And hello, everyone. We are back with part three of the subscriber game analysis series. Today I'll be looking at some more subscriber games that were sent in. Exciting. So we're going to start with Savage Antarctican. B4, the Orangutan. Very feisty move. C6, Bishop B2. Okay, we have like a Slav setup against this. And white already achieves a strong bishop positions on b2 and c4. Now, b5 seems like a very strange move by black, just creating this gaping weakness on c5. It doesn't do much for the black position. So bishop back to b3 and knight to f3. I wonder if this was a gambit of a pawn or white didn't realize that b4 was hanging, but it is possible to play bishop takes b4 here with black, and probably objectively the best move. But bishop to e7, castles, and d4. So this pawn is still going completely gambited. Knight to d2, and only now a3. So this makes me think that white was gambiting this pawn. Not sure what compensation is exactly achieved by gambiting this b pawn, but black should definitely be playing more actively than a6. a5 should be the try here for black, trying to break open this queen side. But a6 is just too passive, and bringing the rook off of the a file is also not a good idea because you're not going to get in this c5 move unless you play some sort of a5. And if you do play a5, then a8 is the best square for the rook. So, okay, queen b6. Black finally plays a5, and now a4. I'm not sure if a4 is necessary. You don't really have to go into an ending here as white. A4, it does temporarily give up a pawn, which in all likelihood you will win back. But if you look at how cramped black is, these pieces aren't doing anything. Then you realize that maybe trading the queens isn't the best, but you're still better in this ending, so white's still doing well. All right, c5, I would consider bishop to a3 here, taking advantage of this pin. Yeah, e5 just seems like it's giving up too many squares. Now the black knight comes to d5, and I'm not comfortable with giving up the d5 square and us not having achieved much from it. So knight a5. Now this capture happens. Knight c4 takes. All right, knight b6. Yeah, knight b6 is good. Takes. And now white wins back the d-pawn. So it almost feels as though, okay, so draw is agreed in this position, but it almost feels as though white had a strong advantage, and then over the course of a couple of moves gave it away. So one of the main things is you don't need to play a4. So if we rewind a bit, okay, let's fast forward a couple of moves, went too far there. A4 is not necessary. Black's pieces are super cramped, so you can just let them be that way. Don't do anything committal. Maybe it's possible to trade queens a different way. If you want to play queen to c3, that's possible. Or even rook to c2 with rook c1 coming is an idea. But you don't need to play this a4 move. All right, good game though by Savage Antarctican and Cheesecake Assassin. Let's jump into the next one. Next one, we have Matthew Art versus Dacoit to 1800s. So this should be an interesting one. Let me change the window here. All right, we've got it up. So white plays, white plays e4, d5 takes. We have a Scandinavian with c4. Now, I don't think c4 is a good move here. Trying to hang on to the pawn is not the way to go, because you severely weaken this d4 square. And white can suffer for this in two ways. One was played in the game, pawn to e6, d6, bishop e6. But the other one, which I actually prefer, is c6. So c6 takes and knight takes. Now we have firm control over this d4 square. We're getting ready to just heap our pieces onto the square, and it's going to be very tough for white to defend. But e6 was the choice of this player. Dacoit takes, knight c3. All right, queen e7. All right, so queen e2 is reasonable. I guess you're preventing bishop takes c4, but the position still looks shaky for white, and king d1 is evidence that it is a bit shaky because now your king can't castle. But all right, you get it to c2. This position arises, and all right. Actually, I believe that the black player is the one who submitted this game, so I shouldn't be saying you. Pretty solid position for black here. All right, the white king is very shaky. Trades occur, and yeah, this is just completely winning. All right, you get this position, and I believe there was some note here that you were dealing with time trouble. You said this is a pretty recurring thing, but in this position, if you are in time trouble, I understand the desire to trade queens, but you're just so completely winning here that it's not necessary to go for a queen trade. In fact, you should be playing for mate. One thing to consider, if you're around the 1800 level, which you clearly are, is try to see which part of the game you're lagging behind in. In which part of the game are you thinking a lot about your moves? So for me, even to this day, I tend to spend a lot of time in the opening. And so that was a hint to me that I need to be extremely well prepared in the opening because it's not good to spend too much time there. And recently I've been working on moving faster in the opening, even in positions that I'm not comfortable with or haven't prepared in advance, because you need to save that time for later. Not many great things are going to happen right out of the opening for either side. It's very uncommon for anything so drastic to occur. So now I've been allocating more time to the middle game and end game where it's more necessary. So consider what part of the game you're spending a lot of time in. But good game. Let's move on to the next one between Assyrian King and Artec 15. All right. So I believe it was Assyrian King who submitted this one. And he's playing the white pieces, c4, c5, and we get a symmetrical English. Okay, so in these sorts of positions, I always find it fun to go for like a3 lines. And if black plays e5, which might have been his attempt, we go b4, just sacrifice the pawn. So Assyrian King, if you're watching, look out for this idea. Takes, and bishop to a3. Very powerful move, and it's tough for black to defend these positions. So, okay, let's go back, see what actually happened. Knight to f3 played e5, and now white castles, d6, and here you play d3, which is completely fine. I'm not 100% sure, but it might be slightly more precise to go knight e1 first, with the idea that you want to go knight to e1, knight c2, knight e3. If you're familiar with this concept, this is a pretty common idea, rerouting the knight to e3 so as to control the d5 square even more. Now you have a bunch of pieces attacking this square, and it's looking pretty unlikely that black will ever orchestrate this d5 move. But let's see what happened in your game. You played d3 instead, and black played this a6. So you're going for b4, trade. Here I might also consider knight to e1, because the knight on d4 is not on a stable outpost. After knight e1, I can just play e3, kicking it away. So knight e1 is also consideration here, even knight to d2 with the same idea of e3. So yeah, either of those moves. Knight takes d4, I wouldn't play. But knight d5, okay, and b5 takes. Queen b3, so you're getting good pressure over here, and you snag the bishop pair. More importantly, you take your opponent's better bishop. In the last part of this series, I was talking about how it's important to recognize which one of your opponent's bishops and which one of your bishops is better. So because all of your opponent's pawns are on dark squares, the light square bishop is important. So you trade it, takes, rook takes, now you're just completely winning. And right here, this is another critical moment of the game. Bishop takes c6 is not the move that you want to play here. Your opponent's knight is not a good piece, but your bishop on g2 is an absolute monster wreaking havoc on the black position. So don't trade that important bishop. It's absolutely critical to your position. The black knight is doing absolutely nothing, so keep your bishop, don't take the knight. This minor piece trade favors black, but you win another pawn, and this conversion seems to be relatively easy. You just push the a pawn, trade off, rook b6, and now these two pawns are tough to stop. And black has to concede something, c6, and the game just ends on the spot. So good game by Assyrian king. Consider what I said about that bishop for knight trade, that you shouldn't be trading such a good minor piece for such a bad minor piece. All right, let's jump into the next game. We have Akbar II the Great versus Jacro. And if I remember correctly, Mr. Akbar II the Great was very keen on having his game analyzed. So let's do it for him. All right, this was a draw, and d4, d5, we get a normal queen's gambit position with e3. Bishop d7 is very strange by black, and the black player here is about 1750, so I would expect that he knows what to do in this position. It's possible that it was a mouse slip for bishop to f5 or bishop to g4, which are both much more common. But bishop d7, okay, and this bishop is now just very poor on that square. b5 makes it even worse. But all right, b4. Yeah, black is playing very weirdly here. I'm not sure if I can get on board with this. Knight g3. Okay, knight e5. And a rook lift. If you're going to lift your rook, it's possible that h3 is a better square to lift it to, just because the g6 pawn is tough to attack. But I get that your idea is after rook to g3, you're threatening bishop takes f5, but try to not go for these one movers. Additionally, this c6 pawn is hanging after bishop to e6, so you can just come scoop up this pawn, and you'll be winning there as well. But rook to g3 takes, queen h5, all right. And you give up a piece, give up a bunch of pieces over here for the attack. Queen takes e6, okay. Can you just play king to f2 here? Because your opponent's king is sort of trapped, so I'm wondering if you can just win with king to f2, threatening rook h1 mate. And I think this might be the most critical moment of the game, because if check, we run up to g3, rook to g8, threatening to win the queen, but we just have rook h1 with mate. So this was a critical moment, going king f2 here, not trying to recapture material. If you're going to go all in, if you're going to let black capture all the pieces on your queen side, be all in. That's an important lesson to learn here. If you're going all in, be all in. Go king f2 and look for mate. But here now, you just have to force a perpetual after missing this mate idea. But good game by Akbar II the Great. You put yourself in a position where such a tactic was possible, which is good in itself, putting yourself in that position. Because that means in future games, you will have opportunities like this as well. All right, let's head back and take a look at the next one between Brundle and Shaka. 1600 playing against a 1760. All right, I'll switch the window up. All right, let's see how this game went. Pawn to d4, knight f6. We have a King's Indian defense. Very exciting. So I believe White commented on this saying that I just slowly lost control. I'm not sure how it happened. The first thing here is if e5 is an attempt to capitalize on your opponent's mistake of not playing d6, it's actually not a mistake. Black is trying to get you to play e5 so that he can play knight to e8 and start provoking your center with d6 and c5. So e5 is not the best move here. You can just play normally with whatever variation you play in the King's Indian. I don't know if that's knight to f3, bishop e2, knight f3, h3, whatever that is, just go into that and don't try to capitalize on your opponent's supposed mistake, because it's actually not a mistake. So knight e8, and your opponent goes for the sort of rat setup, which is not in the spirit of the position. Like I mentioned, c5 is what black should be going for, and d6 to break up the center. So he's playing sort of weird moves, but okay, c5. Yeah, c5 is not the best way to play here for white because it can be very easily attacked. For one, black can play this move f6 to attack the center, but secondly, black can also play this way with b6, a5, and bishop to a6, threatening to trade off your good bishop for his bad bishop. So takes, and now black has this very strong idea of just assaulting your center with knight to d7 and e5. So playing c5 is not the best way to go. And yeah, g4 is also not the way to go here. I understand that your idea is you're trying to trap this bishop, but this is too short-term a goal to be successful. White can move this knight away, black can move this knight away, creating a square for the bishop, and later in the game you're going to regret this g4 move because it opens up too much space near your king. So g4 is not in the spirit of the position. g5, e4, okay, we get this position, and black sort of takes his sweet time before taking your piece, and gets quite a formidable attack here, and just a very tough position. Black is up a piece, and there's nothing you can do, and eventually there's mate. So a couple critical moments in this game. The first is don't feel tempted to play e5 in this position because black is just provoking you. Secondly is you don't need to play c5. Keep your pawn on c4. Keep the tension. If you watch my channel, you'll hear me say this phrase a lot. Keep the tension. It's important to keep the tension in the position. Don't try to resolve the tension by either capturing or pushing. You can leave this tension there. Suppose you play a move like h3, stopping bishop to g4. That would be a good move to keep the tension. Allow black to resolve the tension himself, and now you get a good bishop on c4. So this is one of the pros of keeping the tension here. All right, let's move on to the next one, and actually the final game between Amethyst versus Unvith Shaha. And this is a game that black won. Let me pull it up for you guys. All right. So black won this game, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. And we have a normal Italian game. So I believe it was the white player who submitted this, so we'll take a look at it from white's side. Knight g5 is not a good idea here. If your opponent plays bishop c5 on move 3, you're not going to get the fried liver positions you want. So don't go for knight g5 in these positions because you don't want to give up the knight and bishop for the rook and pawn, which you'll see in a second. If your opponent plays bishop c5, your ideas are more like this: d3, c3, h3, knight d2, knight f1, knight g3. Slow playing the position like this. This is how you've got to play these Italian games with bishop c5. Knight g5 just doesn't work because, as you'll see, after h6, you don't want to give up the knight and bishop for the rook and pawn. I have a young student who I tell this to all the time, that knight g5 with knight takes f7 is not ideal in this position because you don't want to be giving up two pieces for a rook and pawn. Black can shelter the king very easily. His king is not really in any danger. King back to g8, king h8, and black's already completely safe. Even with the king on g8, black's completely safe. So you don't want to give up two of your most important pieces, and now you have 0 pieces developed compared to black's 3, soon to be 4. So yeah, let's see what happened in this game. White played bishop to e3, okay. f4, knight to d5, okay. Trading pieces. Let's just see how this turned out. All right. And yeah, just a queen blunder was the deciding factor here. After knight to d4, you can try queen to d1, both protecting your queen and threatening c3. For that matter, I think you can even play queen to f2, keeping your queen on the f file here, and also threatening c3, d4. Queen f7 is a threat, and rook f8 can't be played because you'll just simply take it. So queen f2 is better, but after this c3 move, you lost your queen. The game continued for a while, but you're just completely lost. You're down a queen. So let's just quickly see how black converted it. If you had any last-ditch efforts, any chances. Doesn't look like black gave you any chances here to come back. All right. Just some checks were made, and g7's protected. Good effort, doubling your rooks on the 7th, even in a completely lost position. Going for some counter chances, but unfortunately, it's too little too late here. Even giving up some pieces, black is still winning. And it was a pretty easy conversion for the player with the black pieces here with the ultimate promotion and checkmate. All right, so good game here by white as well. Just make sure you understand that if your opponent plays bishops to c5, you can't go for these fried liver positions because black will simply castle and dispel the threat. So good games by everyone. That was the last game that was submitted. So thank you so much to everyone who submitted your games. We'll be doing another subscriber game analysis very soon, so stay tuned for that. And remember that that one's going to be a little more restrictive in terms of how many games I analyze. So submit your best games, not only ones that you won, but games that you think you can learn the most from. Your losses are your games that I can help you the most with. So don't just take this as an opportunity to submit your best game with white, your brilliancy, in which you crush your opponent in 20 moves, but take it as an opportunity to really learn from the analysis that I'm providing. Thank you guys as always for watching. If you haven't, please subscribe. Every subscription helps me a lot. So if you guys could do that, I would really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the